you now know that we're recording legally. Awesome. We're off to the races. So in this particular recording session, I'm really excited to have some awesome friends. We have prop people from really, mainly the New York area and the Minneapolis and me in North Carolina. So we have Kate Dale, who's over at Juilliard, Kate Foster, who's a set dresser freelancer. Is that right? Or are you specifically on one show?
Hey, no, I am the assistant set decorator on The Blacklist, and this is my 5th year on the same show. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God.
Wow. Time flies.
Alex Martin also coming to us as a freelancer, and Sean McCardle from out in Minneapolis at this point is a freelancer as well. So let's start with you, Kate Dale. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Kate Dale. I am the prop shop supervisor at the Juilliard School, where I have been the prop shop supervisor for north of 30 years somehow. And my shop supports the total activities of the Juilliard School in the drama, opera, and dance divisions, and we provide prop support for 20 some very different productions each year.
Wow, 20%. Kate Foster, since you're next on my windows.
Hey, so I'm Kate Foster. I am currently the assistant set decorator on The Blacklist, a TV show you may have heard of, or your parents may have heard of. I have a slightly different job than other people here, but I did start out doing technical theater and working as a prop person, and I switched to film and television about between 15 and 13 years ago. Like 13 was the full switch. I've worked on other stuff, but I've had this job for 5 years now, as I just said.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. I can't believe it's been that long. Alex Martin, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm basically retired at this point, although I do occasionally get involved in a variety of projects, usually instigated by Kate Dale. Our recent, I started out actually in technical theater, working in church basements in New York City back in the olden times. And then I worked as the prop shop supervisor for 4 years and hired Kate. And she has now made that into a true art form. And I mean that quite sincerely. And so then I went back into doing basically freelance and that kind of work. And so most of my recent work has been at Coney Island, USA, working on productions down there, one of which we just almost got open, and the virus hit, and we ended up not being able to do it. So anyway, I've been involved over the course of the last most of my career has been as a prop builder and props and sets. So
awesome. Thank you. Sean?
Yeah, I too was in New York for many years and worked as a prop master. I was at the Public Theater for many years and did this prop master thing. But these days I've been going freelance and running my own company kind of off and on since 2008. That I started in New York, and then I moved to Minneapolis in 2010, and I run my own fabrication company called Hero Crops. And but also while I've been here in Minneapolis, I also worked at the Guthrie for 5 years. So I've got a lot of background in regional theater. And now I have my own prop fabrication company that I just went full-time with in December, which seems like oddly good timing, considering the fact that if I had still been at the Guthrie at this point, unfortunately, I would have been laid off with everybody else, and I would have been starting my own studio up again. So now I have my studio. So here in Minneapolis, I have a studio space that I'm renting over in Northeast. That is a really nice, like small prop shoppy maker space. And the building that I'm in also has its own carpentry shop maker space. So I'm able to go to another part of the building that I don't have to maintain and build. And then there's another company in the building that has laser cutting capability. So I'm actually a lot more digital stuff these days than I had been doing in ever before. It's actually really fun. So it's evolving really quickly, especially considering everything that's going on in the world right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. That's like I showed you just a second ago with all the props in my garage that I can't take anywhere because the shows were canceled. So let's start with, I've got a huge list of questions. I sent them to you guys a while ago, but mainly I kind of like starting out with, like, what's a favorite, do you have a favorite thing? Now remember, PG Alex. What is one of your favorite props that you've built? Let's start with Kate Dale. What's your favorite prop in your history?
Takes me a minute to unmute, but hello. I give this one a lot of thought, and it always changes. This one, it's kind of not a prop, except it kind of is a moment. It's a moment that was caused by a couple of props, and that was in a production of The Greeks Part 2, and the play within that was Agamemnon. And in that play, Clytemnestra murders Agamemnon and also the woman that he was cheating with in their bed. But in this production, their bed was made up of like 20 army cots pushed together. So it's a giant bed. They're on the bed. Clytemnestra pulls this bucket from underneath the bed and brings in a chain hoist, and they hoists the bucket up, pulls a thing on the bucket, and spins or swings the bucket into an arc, and then blood flowed out from around the bottom edges of the bucket, bathing all three of the occupants of the bed and the entire bed in this huge pool of blood. All the while she's singing her face off, basically, and just has blood running all down her body. And my carpenter at the time, Mark Gill, designed this bucket with a sort of a plunger like a toilet, so it had an inner reservoir and an outer reservoir. So the beginning of the flow started, and then there were different holes around the sides of it, so the flow of the blood came out. And the part of it that I built was basically just coming up with the blood recipe that we could manufacture cheaply and consistently, and that it's with a rate of flow. So we were timing things out, so we tried different consistencies so that the time it was essentially, it was the amount of blood that's in an average human body, and I forget what that is, like 8 liters or something. So it's that amount of blood in the length of time of the song. So it always ended right at the time the song ended.
Wow.
That was formulating, and it was, I've talked to people that saw that, and it was a pretty indelible moment as far as moments go. But like, there's a lot of things I've made that are like pretty or complicated, but that thing was crazy. So that would be one of my favorite. I have a lot of different favorite things. So ask me another day. There's another.
I know, and it's funny because when I was reading these questions, I was reading as a prop person myself, and I was like, gosh, it's hard because there's so many. But Alex Martin, do you have a favorite? You are currently muted. There you go.
Probably for a number of reasons. One of my favorite projects was when I came back to Juilliard and worked on an opera where there were 3 clocks that had to be manipulated as sort of as puppets, and they had activities that they had to do during the show. And then basically the show involved a man who is being cuckolded, and his wife smuggles her lovers upstairs inside of a clock. So it had to be a clock that could be carried up a flight of a grand staircase. So it had to be lightweight, but it had to be able to be carried on the back of one of the singers up the stairs. And it had to do a bunch of other tricks. It had little trap doors and various other things so that you could see what was going on. And the thing that I liked the best about it is not just that it was made out of cardboard, which is my favorite working material, but the thing that was really great about it is that it was a really interesting collaboration, because it was a costume that had to be fitted. It had to do the things that the director wanted done. It had to, fit within certain size constraints and, time constraints on getting them built. And they all had to look of a piece. And so I think that the other reason that it's my favorite is that it was a series of challenges, both social and technical and physical challenge. But I felt very good about meeting those challenges. So that's a lot of what makes an experience a good one, is that it presents challenges and it's satisfying when you are able to meet them.
Gosh, yeah, I totally agree with that. So many shows that you work on, and when it's done, and you've done it in a way that's it just comes across as really cool. You're like, yeah, that's a good point. Good point. Kate Foster, same question.
Okay, so I have 2. I have a prop one and a set decorating one. Do you want both? Can I?
Yeah.
All right. So the prop one is one of the earliest big projects I ever had, which was on the opera Iolanthe, which has a lot of fairies in it. And the designer was Christine Jones, and and her work was kind of based on this. I just double checked myself. It's Cecily Mary Baker, who did these fairy illustrations, and they're flower fairies. So each fairy had a different flower staff. And I got some pretty rough sketches, and then a kind of an image of what the final piece should look like, and a list of flowers. So I made a daffodil staff and a hyacinth staff and a daisy staff, and I had renderings, like complete renderings for a few of them, and very rough renderings for others. And then it was a question of, like, I welded the staffs, and then I paper maché'd them, and then I figured out what materials to shape different flowers out of. And this was quite a while ago when LEDs were really new. And my boss, the prop master, found little battery operated LEDs, and we built them in and then like paper maché'd over them. And I mean, it was really challenging, because I had to figure out what materials to use and what shapes I was making. And I had, it was a long-term project, but it was still a pretty tight schedule. And I think we needed like 24 different flowers, different colors, all in the same feel, all in the same look. And I kind of had to track the whole, there's enough, I was learning enough and I was doing enough new things that it was interesting and challenging, but it was also a question of pacing the job and kind of making sure that, and a couple of them, I did have to repaint some of them. I remember because I didn't, it's like, it was a wide variety of things and a wide variety of skills. And I'd say that's still probably my weakest point is like finish painting. So that was it was interesting and it was challenging and it's the same kind of thing. It really contributed to the final piece. Because the entire chorus was carrying these things, and the queen had to say, like, yeah. So it made a big difference on stage, and the process was also really great for me. So that's what I'd say about that. But the work I do now is really different, and I don't build things in a craft way. I build things by finding the different components and making a space. So in film and television, the prop master does guns, cars, food, things that people hold, like cell phones and watches and briefcases, and then really specialty items. Like on my show, there are a lot of bombs, and our prop master and our prop crew are great at building detonators. But we make spaces. So one thing we do a lot is we take a space in New York City and make it look like another country. And that is my favorite thing to do. So recently, there's this weird derelict series of buildings in Staten Island. It's an old, I think it was a smelting, it's definitely like you find pieces of ore in the ground, like not ore, slag in the ground. But it's a series of old brick buildings, and we recently turned one of the spaces into a Ukrainian street, which was really great, and was really. So what we did is the set deck team, we got all of the things you might need for a market street. So we had fruit vendors, we had a rug seller, we had clothes vendors. I think we might have had a knife sharpening guy. And it all came from research. So it all came from photo research of real things that real people do in the Ukraine in a small town and the way that the markets look there. And there's a lot about fruit stands that's universal, but it's not actually. So like we've done the same thing. We did a similar thing that was Indonesia. And I actually got to go to Indonesia, and I found out that we did a pretty good job, actually. And one of the things we did, we went and we made a list of fruit that people sell in Indonesia. And then when we did the Ukraine, we went and made a fruit, and we were like, oh, it's root vegetables, it's not dragon fruit. And you can, if you pay attention to that stuff, you can see that the work we did helps you to believe that you're not in Staten Island, you're in a small town in the Ukraine, or you're in Jakarta in this bustling city center. So that's kind of, and it's the same thing where it's the most it's challenging. Like I know where to start and I know what research to do. And we all kind of work together to pull it off, but it also has an impact on screen that really helps the story. That's what I got.
That is awesome. That's a question that came up very similar, and I'll probably ask it later on here, is the question of the difference between like live theater and television or film, because things are going to be different. Now, we were talking about lighting in that case, and so, lighting for television versus lighting for live theater, but that'd be interesting. I'll probably have questions as we come back to that one. Sean, do you have a favorite?
Yeah, one of the last shows that I did at the Public that then I actually did after I left the Public, so one of my very last projects was Kicking a Dead Horse by Sam Shepard, and the entire play revolved around an actual dead horse on stage. And they had originally staged it in Ireland and did a decent job of it, and what they actually did was taxidermy a real horse. It was wild, and I saw pictures of it, and unfortunately what they ended up with looked like a taxidermied horse because it was super duper stiff. And Sam was actually directing the show, and he's an expert on horses. So when it came over to the Public, he wanted it to do a few more things that they hadn't gotten to do before, which was look more realistic. And at the end of the play, it falls into a grave. and it had to be able to do that consistently every single evening, but it also couldn't be nailed down. So an actor was wrestling with this horse during the entire show, kicking it, moving it, rolling it up onto its back, tying ropes to it to try to drag it into the grave, could never get it there. And at the end of the play, he would crawl down into the grave itself, and the horse would topple in on top of him, and it completely disappeared from the stage. And now let's see if we can get fancy, because I think I can show you on this app, because I can share screen, and then I think if I do this, you should be able to see the video that I play. Tell me if this works.
Yeah, I don't
And
see anything.
there it goes. Did that work?
No, I don't see anything on my end. Looks like it's just a picture of you with a Polaroid.
Oh, weird. Can you see that?
Nope, not on my end.
All right, never mind.
We're all
Well,
figuring.
next time we'll figure out more technical stuff. But I've got a whole bunch of pictures of what the whole process of building it was, and I've got video of it actually doing the thing where it falls down into the grave. And we ended up finding a taxidermied horse form from Van Dyke's Taxidermy. And so it was a big giant foam horse with metal armature on the inside of it. And we cut it apart. We made it like a puppet and connected it all back together, and then actually found real horsehide to upholster it with, so that it was completely authentic. And we made two of them. We ended up making a rehearsal one and a real one. So yeah, that was my big favorite one.
Interesting. So real quick, just because I have to nerd out with you guys, is that I've been, for the past couple of days, I've been trying to think about what my favorite would be, and there's so many, because I'm a little bit quirky, and I like things that are a little bit just left of normal. And so for the Love of Three Oranges, like everything on that one was just fun. And I know a couple of you guys, well, the Kates and Alex are all in there. And then one that I did recently that sticks out, just because I had a lot of pride, because my wife actually made me close the garage door because it looked too real, was I had to do for Dancing at Lunasa at Duke, I had to do a skinned rabbit where they shoot it and then they skin it. And so, I basically just took the plastic skeleton of a Halloween cat, broke that all up, kind of like you're talking about, Sean, and then I just reattached it with filament so that it'd have the wobbliness. And then I added some muscle structure to it to give it some definition. And then I just did sheets of liquid latex, and then laid that over it, and then just did a bunch of dry brush technique to do the striations of the muscle and things like that. And, going in line with where the muscles would naturally be in the ribs or in the forearm structure. And I was working that out here in the garage, and of course, it's nice. Caroline said, "You got to close the garage door now because everybody thinks it's a real skinned rabbit." That one was kind of fun, just because it came across as like really cool looking. And then of course I brought it to a production meeting one day, and I'm like, "Here's your skinned rabbit." They're like, "That's nasty." I like this question. I'm just reading through some of these random questions about for props
Wait
people.
a sec. I wanted to jump in because I have a little bit of a lower tech thing than Sean, but this is there's my
Oh yeah.
my screen with blood.
That is awesome. I love it. So
You can
Kate,
use that as a tech tip, Sean.
using two different computers. That's what I'm doing. Kate, I'm gonna stay with you. You can stay unmuted. I just had one here. Oh, what would I can't find the exact question, but I know that it's in there somewhere, and there's a bunch of them here for props people, and I want to find the way they put it. If you could, if you could tell your past self one thing, what would it be?
uh, I get probably learn accounting because we all get into this because we like making the cool stuff, but boy, figuring out Excel spreadsheets and estimating time and planning documents and calendars, and the thing that you will learn, especially if you do any in management at all, if you're running a prop shop, running a scene shop, running running a set decorating shop, is time is money, and you gotta figure that out, and being able to show your show the people that hire you where the money is, that's what you got to do.
So that brings me to when you start your very beginning of the process, like you're handed the script, this is the show that we're going to do. What would be the very first thing that you would do? So you've been given a budget, you're going to live by that for the most part, and then you're given the script. What is your process from that point?
As a props master, because a lot of that, a lot of the certainly certain choices are going to come from a director, come from a set designer, but you need to find the things in the script that are kind of flags. You're looking for food, you're looking for weapons, you're looking for blood, you're looking for, does this happen in one location, or do we move around to several locations? Is it a period piece? Is it a period that, if I have a prop stock, is it a period that I have a lot of, or is it like, or is it some kind of ancient or fantasy period where we might have to build a lot of things? So these are kind of all the things that I look for. Oh, and musical instruments, music. Some places I hear musical instruments are the responsibility of a sound department, but that's not been my experience. Any musical instrument that is played by an actor is considered a prop, and that has ranged everywhere from a full rock and roll band with guitars and basses and drums and amps and everything, to grand pianos that you have to like gut and then put an electronic keyboard in. So those are kind of the things that I look for. And then once you get in contact with a director or a set designer, you figure out what's important to them and you focus on those. Doesn't mean you can let go of the other stuff. You got to account for all of it, but you got to figure out what the things that are, there's some numbers that you just can't do much about. Like if somebody's using a practical gun, you want to rent the best thing that you can afford, because that's something that's a safety concern is always the highest budgetary priority. And then if somebody doesn't have the pretty, whatever pretty fabric they want, that doesn't matter. As
yes, I mean, this conversation could last hours. I'm afraid that because I just did a show where I had to have the firing a weapon on stage, and everything. I mean, it really starts with the safety as the top thing, and it's not just for you and the crew, the actors, but then you also have to think about the audience. So your load size is going to be pretty intense. But Kate Foster, so because you're on the set dressing thing, what is your process to start with? Like, I don't know anything about your particular medium as far as that goes.
Cool. Well, we get, especially, I'm going to kind of stick to the show I'm on now because it's a little different. This is it's a contemporary show, but we go all over the world, and we do all kinds of like businesses and warehouses and stuff. So we get a new script every 7 to 9 days. And that script changes constantly until we're finished shooting it. Like, we get edits at least once a day, sometimes a lot more than that. And the first thing that we do there, and so this is not true on every TV show. Some shows have what's called a pattern budget, and they expect you to spend $30,000 or a lot more. There's a lot of money involved, but so they expect you to spend the same amount of money on each episode. And where I work now, we have a little more latitude. So like, I'll read the script and my boss will read this. So we'll kind of read it together. And there are two things. I mean, she's mostly focused on the money and I'm mostly focused on the research aspect. But so if there's a big party, if there's a wedding, if things get blown up, if things and people get shot, that costs a lot more money. There are different kinds of we've done a bunch of, I did a gun show recently, actually, that was pretty expensive because it was a huge space and we had a lot of stuff to do. Not that kind of gun show. Sorry. I'm so sorry. But so the thing that I do personally, as soon as I get the script and I have a chance to sit down and read through it, I will read, and every time I hit a different location, that's not, and actually, even if it's like just someone's bedroom, I will start to do research. And when I read the script, if there's something that happens or they say something, like sometimes people in medical shows, they say things that sound made up. And I don't have a lot of medical knowledge. So I immediately am reading the script and then I'm right in front of my computer and I look it up. So no matter what it is, if it's, I did an episode that took place on a college campus, and I immediately asked every kid I know who's in college to send me pictures of their dorm room. Because that's important. It's important that things look real and that they look contemporary and not like what my dorm room looked like 30 years ago. So that's that kind of stuff. It's the same thing. It's like the thing with the, with doing overseas sets where you have to get that right. We did a clock shop. That's I will send you pictures of some of these so you can stick them in. It was gorgeous. It was amazing. There was a scene where our main actor was talking to someone who was repairing a pocket watch. And that's really the responsibility of the prop department to do the actual physical watch repair sequence. But we needed to have all of the things, the workbench and all of the correct tools and all of the kind of working chaos that we went back and forth because who is this person? Are they super specific? Or is it an old and quirky person who's been doing this forever and so has gears and business all over the place, which is kind of where we landed. And so you kind of, I guess, so what I'm saying is you go back and forth, right, between the script, which is always going to dictate if you're doing that, if that's what you're doing, because there are lots of other jobs where you don't work off a script. But if you're doing theater, if you're doing film, if you're doing television, you go back and forth between your script and your research. And that could be your materials research. That could be photo inspiration. That could be research about the character. That's
awesome.
What I do.
I'm glad you brought all that up because just a couple of days ago I did. There you go. Awesome. A couple of days ago I did the lesson on design, and I do design for everybody, including props. So each shop, including props, and that's one of the things I talked about is when I have my list. Like the first thing I do after the conversation with the director or designer is I do all sorts of research, and even leading up to that conversation with the director designer, especially when there are things I have no clue what it is. I look all that stuff up and I'll have pictures just so that I have things to reference. I'm glad you brought that up. So I know Kate Dale and Kate Foster, you guys have crews that you work with. Alex and Sean, you guys as freelancers, can you describe your process where as a freelancer myself, I don't necessarily have a crew. And so you have to kind of build an entire show on your own. So, Sean, I'm thinking specifically, I remember years ago, you and I had the conversation with Blue Man Group where when you're in Minneapolis, and they'd give you an idea of what they wanted for a prop, and then you would basically go to your local hardware store and build from there. So do you have anything to like add to like your process as a freelancer, how that goes? Because I know all of us are going to read the script and we kind of go through it that way, and then where do you go from there?
Yeah, it's one of the things I like about it, and one of the reasons that I ended up going this way is because my job always ended up tending to be figuring out the biggest, most complicated prop or special effect. And now I get to narrow in and focus on just what that thing is. So it's almost like the project itself is the show, the prop becomes the show. And it's a different kind of budgeting because you're able to, narrow it down in a little bit. But oftentimes it's also weird because you have to remember, especially with the way I work now that I'm in Minneapolis, most of the time I'm doing something big and complicated like that, I'm shipping it somewhere. So there's a lot more variables that come into how to budget it. And, sometimes it's like some little project doing blood effects for like a college. And sometimes it's doing some big ass thing for a Fortune 500 company. And it's so that you end up having to be very flexible with how you end up approaching things. And then especially right now, one of the things that I'm very lucky about is the fact that I set up a studio that is very much a solo studio, thinking that I'm going to be able to expand up at some point. But because of the pandemic world that we live in right now, the fact that I have a solo studio set up is kind of a perfect thing. And like what I'm starting to work on now is figuring out that if I'm going to scale up and work on a project where I need help on it, figuring out how to compartmentalize that and being able to communicate remotely like what we're doing now, and then figuring out how to get somebody else into the process, which is one of the things that I am doing right now. Like on the project that I'm on right now that I can't talk about or show any pictures of because I'm under an NDA on it, but I'm able to do all of the fabrication myself in the studio building I'm at because the laser cutters are in the same building. And so I can have a very small vector interface with another person in the building and we can keep our social distance. But I've been working with an old friend from college who has a degree in architecture. And so he's drafting the project for me in Nebraska. And we're doing the whole thing in SketchUp. And we're able to work together, but working remotely. So that's a lot of how my project and my projects and my work is changing right now. And literally it's evolving in front of our eyes right now.
Mhm.
And to answer your question about what I wish I had learned, to riff on what Kate said, it's yes, everything that she said in as much as how it applies towards budgeting a show, but personal business finance is the area that I wish I had had a degree in, even as much as this weekend, because I'm sitting down as a self-employed freelancer trying to figure out how to make finances work in this new era. And I'm doing things like adopting QuickBooks Self-Employed, which is different than regular QuickBooks, which I'm glad I'm going with because the reason that QuickBooks is good is it helps you do payroll. And suddenly I'm not having to do a whole lot of payroll because I can't bring anybody into the studio. Self-employed works great because it does a really good job of like tracking mileage and things like that. But when I was starting out, I wish I had had a class that said, when you go freelance, you are a small business person. You are an entrepreneur. And these are the things that you should know going into this about tax preparation, about budgeting, about whether you're hiring somebody else, whether it's a 1099 or you need to put them on payroll, all those kinds of details of running a small business, because that's something I never got and I've had to self-teach myself all along the way.
So I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I'm making notes off to the side here. One of the things that I started pushing a lot more last year is how to build a resume and how to write a cover letter. Because we're doing digital portfolios now, which is a way where you can send your portfolio out. And then I realized that none of my students knew how to build a resume. So then we started doing that last year. And then I realized that they didn't know how to do a cover letter. So we did that. And I'm glad you brought up the personal finance, because that is something that I've pushed. Well, I've at least made a little bit vocal at the high school level, is that a lot of these guys, they get even into college and they're like, oh, I need my own insurance now.
Right.
Things like that. So I might do, maybe I'll do something in my class. It may not go into any great detail. I mean, it's high school. But I wrote all that down because that's a good point, Sean, that maybe that's something I can bring up to them, is realize that, there's different parts of our business. I mean, you're going to have the salaried positions where you're going to get benefits and what that means. And then there's going to be the freelance where you have to go for your own insurance. Otherwise, if something happens, there's no such thing as workman's comp if you're working in a garage,
Right.
Alex Martin, do you have anything to expand on that? As far as the original question, which is, what if you had any advice for your younger self?
Well, I think probably, I'm very impressed by everybody's response about the, personal finance aspect of things, and being able to finance a budget and make a budget and keep track of all of that kind of stuff, and learning how to use, spreadsheets and doing accounting and all of that. I think personally that everybody should have that. I don't care what you do for a living, that everybody should have that, because it's the one area where people just, it makes you have more confidence if you are able to manage those parts of your life. And it doesn't matter whether you're, working for the sanitation department, or whether you're building props or any of that kind of stuff. So I would encourage you to encourage your students to get as much of that kind of, training as possible. And along with that, when starting out doing freelance work, is I would advise myself, never try to figure out how much you make an hour. It's too depressing. So, just those two things. But I agree with you all about, the personal finance aspect of things.
Thank you. So I'm going to open this next question kind of up to anyone that wants to jump in. Is this whole conversation is kind of like bridging that gap where, the high schoolers are going to have their main questions about how you kind of get into this whole thing. And I try to explain to them how it works. Whoops, Kate Dale, we lost her. We'll get her back hopefully here in a second. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought. Basically how you get into this business. Because I tell my students all the time that for me, a lot of it was a willingness to basically do anything. I mean, I was willing to take a job and learn, and I had an open-mindedness to it. Like, I wasn't cocky. I didn't think I already knew everything about it. And so I automatically, like, my whole attitude was, I'm going to learn from anybody that I can learn from. I wasn't going to say, oh, I already know that. And then on top of that, I always tell them that every door that opened for me, I walked in, and every once in a while, it may not have been the best choice, and you walk yourself back out and you go to the next one. But I don't know, do you have anything to expand on that? I hope we get Kate Dale back here, but any of the three that are left in here, do you guys have anything to expand on that?
Can I make a pitch for education?
Yeah.
So I had a wide variety of educational background, but my last academic experience was at the North Carolina School of the Arts, which is a damn fine school for everything we're talking about. Little pitch. And one of the one of the things that really that school helped me do is to set up to apply for jobs. and to know, and it's what you're talking about with writing a resume and writing a cover letter, but on a larger scale. And that is something that, you know, an academic program can do for you. And it's also, and actually Kate Dale runs a, you know, has interns every year. And that's, so there are jobs, there are both focused academic experiences and post undergraduate or postgraduate, I guess, work experiences that will kind of train you up and point you at job opportunities and kind of help you to step but into the working world and kind of give you a leg up. That said, it's not necessary.
Right. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I have brought that up to my students in the past, is that exact point when they're asking me like which school they should apply to or which one they should accept and things like that. And I was telling them, like, it really depends on what the opportunity is that school is going to provide for you. As far as a place like School of the Arts is going to put you immediately in front of the people that you need to be in front of. Whereas me coming from, it was a big university, but certainly a small theater school at Central Florida, I kind of had to find my own way. However, it's still, I'm glad you brought that up, because it did give me the skills to at least get my feet wet, if you will, you know? Does anybody have anything to add on all of that?
Yeah, I would say summer stock, and with the point of being that, like, when you're young, you have the energy for it, going out and doing summer stock every summer is the best thing you can do, because you're going to get a variety of skills. You're going to start networking. And
Can you explain summer stock real quick, because my students may not know that, and how would you find a job in summer stock?
let's see, I haven't done it in a while. As I recall, um, Art Search tended to be the best place, and it probably
That was,
is.
yeah,
Um,
that was
but summer stock are repertory theaters that pop up in the summers. Like, I started out, my very first professional prop gig was doing summer stock in Nebraska at Nebraska Repertory Theater that's connected to University of Nebraska. And then I did Utah Shakespeare Festival the next summer. And then I did Colorado Shakespeare for 3 summers after that. And I still have friends and people in my professional network that I met 25 years ago doing that have paid off later. So it's a great way to get out there. You get out of your home. You're working professionally at a level while you're still in college, hopefully, because you can do it in your summers while you're still in school. And it's fun. It's like going to camp, especially if you're at the right ones. Yeah, that would be my big advice there.
awesome.
Well,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add to that in terms of both of those things. That the educational institutions, School of the Arts is fantastic. Apprenticeships or internships can really help you make those contacts. And as Sean said, as in terms of summer stock, I am a very big fan of getting in over your head as a learning tool. Like, if the first time that you were a prop master, I mean, you should be a little ready for it, but you don't people sort of sometimes feel like they want to be prepared for whatever they take on. If you're not, you'll lean into it and you'll learn fast, or else. So, don't get in way over your head, and people are a moron if they hire you to do something way over your head. But if it's a little bit over your head, you will learn so much so fast.
Yeah, and to go back even to what Kate was talking about, education too. Kate Foster, but Kate Dale, I totally agree with that. Like, being in the deep end of the pool is literally the best way to learn how to do the job. But on the education thing too, because I did that as well. I got my degree from University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, and I lucked out because I ended up working for Jim Guy, who put me on the path. and there are still really good places in the country that you can get a good prop education. And U of I is one of them, because that program's still going. University of North Carolina School of the Arts is one of the other ones. And but again, like what Tim said, starting out with your intern program at Juilliard is just a valid entry into the biz as anything else is. There are great ways to do it. And Mark Walston's program at Actors Theater Louisville, the intern program that they have at Actors Theater Louisville is something everybody in college should look at, because from actors to every part of technical theater, because they do a fantastic job of like a 9-month internship. And by the end of that thing, not only have you come out of that with incredibly great skills for whatever area you're in, your network is also great, because then they have the Humana Festival and they have people coming from all over the country coming to see shows there. So that's another one for your students. Should really look at that one.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear all of that. I want to put this out there real quick, is that we're coming up on the hour mark, and I've got stuff that I still want to talk about. So I'd probably do one more question, and then is there an interest to do another one of these, maybe another week or so? Is that okay with everybody if we did this again? And then I could do a part 2. That'd be good. Thank you. This has been awesome. First of all, it's awesome to see you guys anyway. I love this. But then on top of that, the information that you're giving is going to be great for the students. So one of the things that comes up every once in a while, because I have to design basically everything that happens in high school. And then every once in a while, I get some of my students going on. I get some of my students going on designing some of the shows as well. And the thing that pains me as a prop person is that you have to concentrate on the set and painting and then lighting, and then usually somewhere in there, the sound and props show up. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I can't focus as much on the props, even though that's what I do. And then, of course, when I come home in the professional world, I'm doing that. So one thing that the question is, do you get designs for the props, or are you just told, make the way they put it is make 4 stools 3 feet tall? Now, I do relay them to them. I'm going to call them coffee shop napkins. But every once in a while, I do remember getting some of those in New York where they just draw it out quick on a coffee shop napkin, and then they'd say, here you go. And it'd be dimensioned. But do you guys have anything to add on that?
How much time do you have?
We have a part 2.
We'll have a part 2. I'm going to answer that really briefly because I feel so seen. It is the biggest variable, and that's the difference. That is the difference between like value you will get because I get everything from I get the gamut from nothing to a lot. Like if a designer is really doing it, I'm getting detailed lists with a research picture for each thing. Otherwise, not. Or like sometimes there's general like period research, or like this is a room that I saw here. And I've even had designers now in the digital age where they have gone online and looked at, because I have a lot of my inventory kind of accessible, and they'll pull the picture of my thing, and I'm like, you're good, good job. And then there is then sometimes they're if they're going to give me vague information, like I want a stool, then if they're not going to be happy with the stool that I show up with, that I'm going to be grumpy about that. So either make your choice or learn to love my choice. Some folks only know what they want when they see what they don't want. That's kind of a drag, but it runs the gamut. Like if something's going to be built, for the most part, I get a drawing, but not always.
Kate Foster, how about in the TV land? You just have to unmute yourself. You're talking. I can see your lips moving, but you're not coming through. Just there
Sorry,
you go. That's all right.
Yeah. I'm going to say that we get the gamut, and we get the gamut in every single episode. In other words, like, we have a production designer, and he has a ton of work to do, and he is simultaneously working on 3 episodes. Right? There's one that has just shot that is still sort of in his is kind of in his rear view, but he's working on it. The one we're shooting right now, and then that person is also scouting locations for the next episode. So in an episode with, like, I don't know, maybe up to 24 locations and sets, there are some where he or she is going to be like, I know what I want this to be, and I want this to be, and I want this to be, and then we have 6 suburban living rooms. And that's kind of where some of those things are determined, like a lot of our suburban living rooms where we don't blow things up and kill people are in real living rooms. So you take your cue from what exists there. But then there are other things. I mean, like the clock shop, I'm going to see if I can send you the drawings for that as well. Because that is one where there was a great deal of detail, and it's one of those shops that's on a lower level. So we got to build the street level, and we did the stairs and the whole. So there was a lot of architectural detail. Often our designers are more interested in the architectural specifics than in the surfaces and surfaces to an extent, but the set dressing that goes in them. So we get a lot more latitude, but it's okay. Because of the nature of our work, you just kind of have to tell us this is the kind of thing that we want, and we can run with it. That said, we do hit a you get what you get and you don't get upset point, even on national network television, even on big budget movies. There are moments where you're like, these are the doorknobs you're getting for these 700 doors, and I hope that you like brass. And it's not, I will say, like, a lot of this job is about the way you present it. I would never say that to a designer or a director. I would always express it more diplomatically than that. But that is always going to be a situation that you reach. Unless you have an unlimited budget, but yeah,
I think it's interesting to hear that perspective of it, because I do talk to them about that. As far as you're going to have the wide range of things. I mean, I get that here, where, like you're saying, Kate Dale, where I'll get a list, and the designer is on every single thing. I mean, it could be something like a styrofoam cup with some paint stuff on it, and they want to know, it's got to be this specific cup. And then I've had designers where it's just me and the director more than anything else. The designer, every once in a while, say, yeah, that looks fine. But for the most part, it's just interesting to hear on the TV side and the film side that it's very similar, Interesting. Alex or Sean, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, I would say, like, as a freelancer, it's very rare. In fact, I don't anymore, like, prop an entire show. It's just not something, mostly because as a freelancer, it's impossible to make any money at the stage that I'm at. And so it's much easier to work on a large project. And so the amount of information that the client comes at you with is just kind of contingent on how much work you have to do to give them what you want. If they come at you with the vague idea of, hey, we have this idea for this thing that we might want to make, you're like, great. Well, then you build into the budget the time to build it and your labor hours for doing the design. Whereas somebody comes at you and says, I have this thing I've designed and I want you to build it and maybe refine it a little bit, that's going to be a different price tag, because they're coming at you with a lot more information. So it's the same kind of thing about a set designer coming at you. The difference being that when you're freelance and you're running your own company, you can say, sure, we could do it this way or we could do it that way, but it's going to cost you extra. And that price point thing, because it's their own money and you're able to just say, rather than pulling money from a show budget, from a production department, having it be much more, the budget be much directly attached to the project, changes the formula of it a little bit. Because you can also say to them, I can see what you want, I can see what you're going for. If you want this, it's going to cost X number of dollars more to get that accomplished. And they're like, oh, no, okay, we'll stick with this thing that's right here. That would be where it would be different for me.
Interesting. Alex, do you have anything to add on to there?
Not so much. I mean, I really am kind of in the camp of when you don't get information, is offering choices and saying, okay, you want A, B, or C, and it helps the person who's trying to make the decision to see a little bit better. And again, I'm also a big fan of building prototypes in cardboard. If you have to build something that hasn't been determined, the size, they don't know how big it is or whatever, is making something out of cardboard for purposes of use and rehearsal, that kind of thing. But offering people choices puts the onus back on them and gives you information. So
that's an interesting thing to bring up too, is that especially on the show that unfortunately this last show that just unfortunately got canceled is we're talking about this one specific type of blanket that they wanted. And so I was going to all the shops in town that I know these owners around town, and I like to shop locally to start. And I would take a picture of about 3 of the different types of blankets that in my mind is what they were wanting. And like, no, too colorful, whatever. And it would narrow itself down. And then, of course, the director kept saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, no, that's all right. That's my job. So I now know exactly what you want. And it was all based on about 5 different pictures from 3 different stores. And I'm like, all right, I know exactly what you want. You don't really want this. You're wanting this type of blanket as opposed to a quilt or something like that, Interesting.
Yeah.
Good point.
I got to work with John Lee Beatty on a show a few years ago, and there was a note that came through, and I got the note and was like, oof, wow, if we do it the way that they asked for it, we would go like this, but I presented options. And when we talked with John Lee Beatty about it, John Lee was the first one to say, well, should we give them what they asked for, or should we give them what they need? And I was like, yeah, there it is right there. And that's what we bring to the table. We're like, I know what you're asking for. This is what you need. Because that's kind of what Kate was talking about, bringing that expertise. I'm like, sure, I'm bringing you this stool. If you don't have an opinion about it, this is the stool, and this is why I'm giving you this stool. This is what you need.
Alex taught me the phrase many years ago, successive approximation. So it's like hot and cold. It's like colder, warmer.
I'm gonna step in. I know a woman who does primarily commercials and photo shoots, and her whole job is really about, it's exactly that. It's bringing in what they want, bringing in what they need, and then bringing in 3 other things that could maybe work. And sometimes it's like, I know this is crazy, but I brought a rocking horse, and then the client is like, oh no, a rocking horse is the best. Which is the thing that actually happened. It was like they wanted certain kinds of chairs, and she was out shopping and rented a bunch of stuff and was like, you know what, I'm just going to get that too. I don't know why. And so sometimes it is often about providing them with choices that are ideas and making sure that one of them is what you think they really need. Yeah.
I love it. This is awesome. I hate to say it, but I should have allowed more time, I guess, but I'm going to jump on with Jeffy Giebert and James Gregg here in about 10 minutes and do one of these with them as well. But Caroline, you got to say hey quick.
Hi. Hi, Caroline.
Hi.
Hey,
This is awesome. I love seeing this baby. I miss you guys so much. I miss every one of you. It's hard.
As soon
It's
as
hard.
New York opens back up, we are coming.
All right, wait,
We were
I'm
supposed
going to
to
take
be-
you on a quick walk around. I got to take you.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wait,
look at
Timmy, are you
we
still recording your
are-
class now?
Yes, he's still recording. You know that,
It's
right?
story. I
Oh.
can edit. I can edit if I need to.
Okay. All right, we're just
I
at
think-
Panorama.
Yes.
Panorama.
Well, Kate's museum is always worthwhile.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, just knowing all of you people is valuable. So it's just awesome. Let's you all give me the thumbs up. So once I kind of get my thoughts back in order, if we could do a part 2, I think that it'd be very valuable to my students. And then if this goes out in the world, as it seems like everybody agreed with that, then I mean, it could be valuable. Just the conversation. I think, I've learned a lot just listening to you guys now. And I've known you guys for weirdly 20 years now.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't realize I was that old.
No, you're not. You're not, Tim.
No,
You're
it's a
Yeah, we're old.
Where's mute so I can swear about that. Anyway, I do appreciate every one of you, and I'll be in touch with you in the next day or two just to kind of set up another time. And if this particular time works for you, 1 o'clock, then we'll go from there. Kate Foster,
Cool.
what's up?
I want to pitch a topic for part 2, but I want you to think about how serious we should be. I
Okay.
think we should talk about the instability.
Mm.
Because I think we've all, but maybe Kate Dale the least, but not entirely. We've all been through periods of work and economic instability. And like, there's a question on here: how has your job been affected by the coronavirus? Because
Yeah.
not only does my job not currently exist, the entire industry is shut down.
Yeah.
And that's not
I-
like this is extreme, but that's a thing that could happen at any time to all of our jobs, and it's
And
have to
I
get-
think
Yeah.
that through this conversation, I'm going
Yeah.
back real quick, is I'm glad that Kate Dale said, with the amount of people that I had originally, it was going to be a long conversation.
Yeah.
And I think, Caroline is going through that now. I mean, all of us in this industry, I mean, I'm in a position where I'm salaried, so I'll be okay. But
My
she
job
was
just
like,
got terminated. Like, my boss just terminated my position.
she won't even have that to come
I
back
don't
to.
have a
so,
job to go back to now. So,
Oh, you
And-
mean all together?
yeah,
Yeah.
all together.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
it's a lighting rental company.
Yeah,
and
it's a
so
production company. I was the upfront office manager for the production company, and he's like, "There's no productions." So yeah, so now I'm back to being a stagehand. Yay!
that's a good point. And
So when these shows open back up again, I'll go
Yeah.
back to being a stagehand. We do what we do.
Indeed.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
kind of the point, right? Yeah.
So maybe that's a good segue then into 2, is we can start talking about the this really kind of goes back to that personal finance thing, is that
Mhm.
one of the things that we've had to do is we save up, because I'm sure I don't get paid over the summer. So we save up so we can pay bills and stuff like that. So we've got a bank saved up, but that eventually runs out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if this thing lasts for any much longer, then you're like, all right, look, man, we gotta figure something out. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good point.
It's-
And
yeah.
I made a note. But I really do appreciate you guys. Love you all. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Nice to see you all.
Bye.
Get out.
Hi,
I don't know how to leave.
Yeah, no, me neither.
I'm not sure. I think you just
So yeah, just,
there's a little
oh, it's up here somewhere, right? I mean, not.
there's a little telephone.
Oh yeah. All right, I'm gonna hang up on you guys.
Okay, ciao.
Bye.
I'm working on some socks for you, Kate.
Ooh.
Neat. Oh, I see the
Exciting.
telephone.
Actually, this is
Oh, did you leave? I can't see you because I messed up my camera situation. Ugh. I can only see myself. Boring. All right.
anyway.
That's awesome. Thank you. I came upstate with not enough clothes.
Oh well.
But it's not that yeah. Also,
Is
I'm
there-
making, if you need a mask, I can send you a mask.
I was just gonna ask you. Is there a snail mail address upstate where you're sequestered?
There is.
Let me have it, and then I can send you the socks.
Oh, okay. Can I, yeah, I can, it's 7. Are you writing it down? Should I even, I can't see you now because I did something stupid.
I am writing it down.
Okay, cool. So it's 7 Cantines Island Lane.
Cantine?
Cantines, Cantines.
Cantines.
Yep.
Lane,
Island Lane.
Island,
Yep. Not
Oh.
island. It's not an island, but whatever.
Island Lane.
And it's Saugerties, New York. And the zip, I always forget. I believe it is 12477. Let me check.
12477.
Yes, I got it correct. Yeah.
12477.
Yep.
Saugerties, New York.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, I will see about, are you planning on being there for a while?
Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll see about sending you some socks.
Awesome.
So, like that.
Ooh, I pinned you to my screen. Well, that would be awesome. Are you in need of a mask?
I am not actually. David's sister-in-law
Oh, great.
sent him 4 masks, 2 of which were for me.
Oh, okay.
And so I have 2. But thank you.
Excellent. No problem.
So
All right. I'm gonna go finish my lunch because I didn't do that.
all right. Chowder.
Okay, cool. Bye.
Bye.
Oh no, it's fucking up here. Oh, I'm the only one here. All right, maybe I.